used to that. Hey, 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 what's the deal, Pickles? That was very country. I say that all the time. Wearing my glasses today. Let me clean them. How are you guys doing? How's everyone enjoying this Escape the Quarantine Friday? How are you doing? Back out shopping and back out doing the things that they say we can do. I'm still in the house and plan to stay in the house because that is what's best for me, right? Anyway, no cool. How you get on here laughing immediately? Don't laugh. So, listen. So while you guys are while I'm waiting for your questions to start coming in, I'm gonna just start with a few things that I have. So on Wednesday, we talked about we started a series on communication called "Can We Talk?" We talked about the barriers to effective communication, and it was good. I really enjoyed the question and answer part, right? But just to kind of give you a recap, so we talked about how all of us come to relationships with different internal dictionaries, right? All of us have internal dictionaries, but they're not the same as anyone else. And so the way that I view the world depends on my dictionary and how I define the world and how I show up in the world. So we can be talking about the same words, but not meaning the same thing. And that's important to know because a lot of times when people get married, they both, say, I want to be married, or they have an idea of what marriage is, but that idea is not the same. They have different ideas of what a husband and a wife is, but a lot of times they don't realize that until they start having conflict. And it's like, hey, that's not what a husband's supposed to do. That's not what a wife's supposed to do. Well, how do you know? It's because they're saying that based on their own dictionary and definition. So that's one of the major barriers to us understanding each other. John Gottman says that we misunderstand each other over 90% of the time that we communicate. Over 90% of the time. That's high, right? Uh, you can't not communicate, right? You can't decide I'm not going to communicate. Even if you're not speaking, you're communicating in your silence. And sometimes, some clients will say, well, he or she starts going in and I just shut down. Well, you're still communicating. Body language is communication. And so we are always, maybe the only time we're not communicating is when we're asleep. But then our brain is communicating with us in a kind of interesting way. Your dreams ever fascinate you? Sometimes when I'm asleep and my mind takes over, I am amazed at the things that it comes up with, especially the things that it has put together that I've never experienced, but it made like its own assumptions and put this together. Anyway, just talking about how fascinating the mind is. But it's probably the only time that we're not communicating. So then beyond the definitions, dictionaries, we also talked about how all of us are different in different contexts, right? I mentioned how Jada Smith said during this quarantine time, she don't know who Will is, you know? And someone says, well, shoots, after all this time, how do you not know who he is? Because the can't leave the house over 50 Will Smith is a Will Smith you've never seen. Why? Different contexts. All of us are different in different contexts. And then another example I gave, if you saw me, I'm not an angry person. But if you saw me in a context that warranted me to be angry, but then that's the only context you saw me and you never saw me again, you may conclude that I'm an angry person or that I'm a butthole, right? Context. So a lot of times we do relationships and we meet a person in one particular context. And then as it shifts, we don't make the adjustment. And so we treat them based on the previous context that we had of them when they're somewhere else. You used to be loving. You used to be caring, and you used to this, and you used to that. Yeah, I did. And you may think, well, I still am that person. However, the context of life has changed, and so you're getting something different. Um, and so those are the two major things. And then I did share with you the 6 layers of communication. It really should be six possible barriers to communication. But I called it 6 layers of communication. I didn't get to show you the slide, so I'm going to show you the slide today because I have it. I created it. Bam, just for you. So, 6 layers of communication. Number 1, what you want to say. And then number 2, what you actually say. And then what your partner hears you say. What your partner thinks you mean. And then their response to what you said. And then finally, what you think your partner is saying about what you said. Those are the 6 layers of communication. Screenshot that if you want to keep it, or just come back and watch it again later. But that's what that is. So I'm ready for your questions. Somebody give me something. Because trust and believe. So today is Friday. I'm off work. I got off work today a little early. And I have other work to do. When I say work, I'm done with therapy, but I have plenty of other things to do because I'm building some things for you guys, right? So I have website stuff to do and all of that. But here's my point. I'm off, and so y'all don't have questions. I trust me, I'm going to enjoy myself. Why? Because next week I'm on vacation. Now, I'm not going anywhere. Okay, so it's more of a staycation. I just needed a break to really get done all the things that I need to get done. Here's something I don't think I mentioned this on Wednesday. The concept of, because we talked primarily about the barriers to communication, and so I want to talk about share this with you, how to communicate. So when you, and I may have shared this before actually because it sounds familiar. Anyway, speaking the truth in love, right? Speak the truth in love. Truth, that's the content of what you're saying. Be honest about what you're sharing. First of all, be honest with yourself, right? When your partner asks you, hey, you okay? Don't say yes if it's no. We're real good at doing that. You okay? I'm fine, but you're not. So first you got to be honest with yourself. And then when you're sharing whatever the issue is, be honest with your mate. Tell them the real issue. Like a guy may say, I'm upset because you made a decision without me and we weren't a team. But his real issue is that his wife made the decision and it took away from him the opportunity to be a hero, and it made him feel like he was less than a man. He don't communicate all that. He just says, well, you didn't act like we were a team. And so when she apologizes for that, the apology is of no effect to him because that ain't his real issue. So you got to be truthful about what you feel and what you're communicating. But just being truthful is not enough. You got to speak the truth in love. And I say this all the time. The truth without love is like surgery without anesthesia, right? It is necessary, but it is painful. You always want to do whatever you do, particularly in relationships, in love, okay? And so remember, love is not about you. Love is about the person you're loving. And so when you're communicating your truth, you want to do that in a loving way, which means I'm going to share with you, but in a way that is not disrespectful to you, because the truth may hurt anyway, right? The truth may already be painful for some people to hear, but as much as possible, you want to make it as light and gentle without compromising the truth. So how do you share how sad you feel to your boyfriend? So I'm processing to see if there's something else to your question, because my answer is just shared. I'm not really. You have to give me more if there's there's a deeper meaning. How do you share how sad you are? You just tell them how sad you are. I don't. What's the difficulty in you sharing how sad you are? I guess that would be my question. What's preventing you from sharing? Like, is it his anger? Do you feel rejected? Do you feel like he's not receiving you? Do you feel like he's not listening? Do you feel like he don't care? Like, what's the issue with you sharing with your boyfriend in the first place? Um, Another thing about communication, we're going to talk about this in the future, is communicating from a place of intimacy, or should I say transparency and vulnerability, right? Which would, that goes in line with speaking the truth in love, because the opposite of that is pride, fueled by fear. We talked about fear in the love series and how fear will make you, fear will prevent you, I'm sorry, prevent you from walking in love, because fear turns your eyes inward. Fear is about me, and I'm concerned more about me than I am about giving outwardly, and so it prevents the love. Again, you just share. You just tell them, hey, um, I'm disappointed in what you did, or I'm disappointed in what you said. And because, see, the thing is, you're not responsible for how your mate feels. So you're not responsible for how your boyfriend feels. Your job is to always be respectful and speak the truth. How they feel about that is their business. You can never control how somebody else feels, right? He doesn't think it's a big deal. So if he doesn't think it's a big deal, but they're so you don't, just like you can't control his feelings, he can't control yours. So if it's a big deal to you, then it's a big deal to you. No one can tell you what's a big deal and what's not. If you're sad about something, then that's how you feel. Whether or not you should let it go depends on if you want to let it go. Maybe he's not as interested in you as you may think, because the purpose of pain is to show up when I need you, right? Like, I don't really need, if I have to choose, I don't need love when I'm doing good. I don't need love to, like, go to the movies and go to the park and go to my favorite restaurant. I don't need love for that. I need love when I'm in trouble. When life is hurting me, I need love to show up and say, I'm here for you, and I love you and I believe in you. So if I'm hurting and if you're hurting and he's downplaying it, then to me that's a sign of his love for you or his care for you. Because we don't do our children like that. Your child comes in the room and they're upset because they can't find their nickel and they're just losing it. You're not going to dismiss them because it's a nickel. Why? Because the reason they're upset may not be significant to you, but they are. And so if your boyfriend is treating you insignificant because he don't like how you feel, then that's a sign. Don't run through red lights. Don't run through stop signs. It's a sign. And I do believe it is a sign that says stop. Because if you can't care about how I feel, then I'm not really sure what we're doing. All right? So you want to be careful with that. I was about to share something else with you guys about communication, but I forgot what it was. So I know Noku has a question. So go ahead and ask. I only call your name because you're the only one that I know was on here for sure. So sorry. Question? Waiting on you guys. Let's see. I obviously need more followers. But I'm going to help who I can help when I can help you. Yep, yep, yep. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit more teaching, and then we're going to call it a day. So, can being left-handed affect how you communicate? Can being left-handed affect how you communicate? Your first response may be, no, that's dumb, sir. What are you talking about? Well, came across a guy who is having difficulty in his marriage communicating. But what we've discovered is that when he was a child, he was shamed really, really bad for being left-handed, right? He was shamed at school and at home for being left-handed. Now, here's the thing about being left-handed or any other thing that's connected to you. At what point in the birth process do you choose to be left or right-handed? You don't. So I'm left-handed, and I'm just left-handed. It's not a right or wrong to me. I'm left-handed, but it is a part of me. If that gets shamed, it's not like shaming me for, wearing dirty clothes. I can just take the clothes off. I can't change the fact that I'm left-handed. So this kid got shamed for being himself. That had a ripple effect through his life. And so then now, and I'm giving you the fast forward version, you get to adulthood, you get in marriage because of the internal beliefs of not being good enough and not being valued. It's going to affect the way that I communicate. Why am I sharing that? Because a lot of times people will blame their spouse or blame people for not being effective communicators as if it's just something they're choosing. Hey, just read this communication book, get some tools, and do it better. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. And so my point in sharing that also too is when you are communicating and you want to be an effective communicator and you want your partner to be an effective communicator, one of the things you have to do is change your expectations. Not lower. I didn't say lower your expectations, but change your expectations, right? Change them so that you're not expecting them to do something they never learned to do, number one. And you're not expecting them to do something that maybe something in their past is preventing them from doing. Just because you get bad from your spouse doesn't mean that they are bad. It may be just how they know how to do life. And they need to learn something different. Yes, I get that because it's hurting you. But what I'm saying is, don't personalize it to them, and then don't you take it personal to say, you're doing this because of me. You're doing this to hurt me. That's probably not true. That's probably not true. So, wanted to make sure I share that. What we did not talk about Wednesday was listening. We're going to be talking about that in the future as well. The art of listening, because listening is an art. When you're when we talk about listening, you have like two dynamics. You have listening, actual listening. From a healthy person, I hear what you're saying. I'm listening. I get it. But most of the times, in an unhealthy way, what we hear goes through these dirty, I call them dirty filters. And we hear something that they're not saying. We add to it, we insinuate, we read into, and then we respond to what we think they're saying as opposed to what they actually said. And so we're going to talk about the art of listening over the next couple of weeks. And let me think. Yeah, I think that's it. So, all right, well, it's been 20. Does everyone get a pass for bad behavior? No one gets a pass for bad behavior. I wouldn't give anyone a pass for bad behavior. No one gets a pass for bad behavior. If God's not giving people a pass for bad behavior, I'm not giving people a pass for bad behavior. Now, by pass, if you mean grace, meaning I don't punish you every time you mess up, well then, yeah, that's called grace. But that's not getting a pass. A pass means what you did don't matter, don't nobody care about it, whatever. You slap me, I'm not worried about that, that's inappropriate. So nobody gets a pass for bad behavior. No. How do you clean your filter? Now that, my friend, is a great question. Great question. Well, so I'm going to answer it this way because I haven't told you what the filters are, because there's like 7 or 8 of them, like specific filters. I'm going to go through them. But because I haven't shared what they are, I'll say in general, well, that's probably the first thing, actually recognizing what they are. And when I lay them out for you, you may realize, oh dang, I do that. Yeah, I do that. But how do you clean them? Um, so one way is, well, first, obviously the first step is being healthy and whole yourself, right? So moving past that, asking questions, because you may hear something, it hit your ears, and you hear something that you don't like. Before you respond to it, get clarity and say, hey, wait a minute, because remember, we all have different dictionaries. Say, now, when you say this is what this means to me. Is that what you meant? And when they say, no, that's not what I meant, then you say, oh, okay. So it did go through your filter, but you've gotten clarity to make sure that you heard what you thought you heard. And that really may not be a filter. So that may just be a comprehension, understanding. The filters I'm talking about, things like, so here's one of the filters: mind reading. Okay, mind reading is a cognitive distortion. We call them cognitive distortions. That's the psychological term for them. The dirty filters are cognitive distortions. So mind reading is, you say something, and I read into what you're actually saying, what you really mean, and like I said, then I respond to that. Uh, what's another one? I can't think of them offhand because I have not memorized them. I have books, but another one is filtering. It's actually called filtering, where when you're listening to someone, you actually filter out the conversation only to pick out the parts that you either like, or, unfortunately, the parts that actually hurt you, the parts that speak to support what you already believe. And the rest of it, you just kind of filter out. And it just happens automatically. These are not things, you don't sit there and say, I'm going to filter some of this stuff out. You don't do that. It just happens automatically. And so changing that is a process of doing the work and becoming an effective listener, doing your own personal work, making sure that you're not walking in codependence, so that you're not, how someone else feel, you're not dependent on that. So if they feel bad or whatever, you're not extra sensitive about how they respond to you. Uh, Seems that it requires a lot of trust, especially since people often don't say what they mean and mean what they say. So, as far as cleaning your filters, takes a lot of trust. The truth is, relationships take a lot of trust in general, but the trust only comes to the forefront of our mind when it's broken. But what we don't realize is there's a whole lot of trust up front that we do with people. We make a lot of assumptions. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. We have to, in order to do life on this planet, right? Like hundreds of things we make up a minute, I would say. Um, but when it comes to trust, yeah. So we trust up front a lot of times, and usually the trust doesn't become an issue until it's broken. So yeah, it does take a lot of trust. I'm not sure what you meant by that exactly, Sonia, but yeah, it does take trust when you're talking about uh, communicating. And I don't know if you're talking about, like, the filters or whatever, believing what they tell you, right, as opposed to what you think that you're hearing. But yes, you're right. So that's why we miscommunicate 90% of the times, because people say things they don't mean. And what's even worse, people say things that they don't mean, and they don't even know that they're saying something they don't mean. They don't even know that they're saying something different than what they think they're saying. And so when you get the wrong message, it's actually more on them than you, but y'all fighting about it. So yeah, it can be complicated. It can be complicated. But the thing is, though, if we can get it right, maybe right's not the right word. If we can just become better at communicating, becoming more patient, lowering, not see, I said not lowering, changing your expectations, where you don't expect them to just do it perfectly all the time just because they met you. Just because they have a master's degree, or just because they have this or that, doesn't mean that they will be perfect at communicating with you. So change your expectations to allow them to be human, and allowing them to have had a past before you. You don't know what in their life has affected the way that they show up today. And if you're going to be with them, then you're gonna have to wade through that stuff just like they're gonna have to do yours. Um, so the thing to me, the thing that would determine if you should spend time continuing to get to know a person, continuing to get to know a person or something like that, is what you see in their heart. Because you're gonna see some foolishness, what I call foolishness, because all of us have a past, right? And so as you're getting to know someone, you you got to look at their heart, and the heart is about how they treat people. How do they act when they are angry? How do they act when things aren't going their way? Those are key signs to say either stop or keep going. Okay, um, at least give them the benefit of the doubt, not believing they had bad intentions. Yes. Now that part, now that Miss Sonia, that is crucial. So what we call that when I'm doing marriage counseling, I call it you have a assume that you have a goodwill spouse. But when it whether it's dating or even your children, whoever, siblings, um, if you assume up front they didn't mean it in a bad way, that at least gives you the opportunity to talk to them about it without you being upset. Because maybe they did mean it in a bad way. But if you assume up front they didn't, you can at least talk about it and get clarity. And then when you realize, oh, they did mean it in a bad way, then now y'all can knuckle up. No, don't do that. But you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. So yeah, actually, yes, definitely give them the benefit of the doubt before you just say, I'm out, or that was ugly, or before you judge them, you know. So what else we got? We got anything else? Y'all came right on time. I was about to hit the red button and then I saw questions. You mentioned we allow more than God allows. Can you elaborate? Absolutely. So, uh, so God has boundaries. When you read the Bible, God says a lot of times. Now, everything about God is not like this, but a lot of times He says, "If you do this, I'll do that. You do this, I'll do that." But what we humans will do, we'll do that even if you don't do that, right? It's a boundary issue. So a lot of times we allow people to use us and abuse us, and we allow people to uh, take advantage of us when that was never God's plan, right? You can't. You can. So for example, here you go. It says, "Bear one another's burdens," okay, which means help each other out with the things that are too heavy for you in life. But in that same verse, it says each man should carry his own weight. And that weight in that part is translated as like knapsack, right? So what God is saying in the scripture is the heavy stuff you help people, but the stuff that they can do on their own, you don't do that for them. So that is in essence what I mean by we allow more than what God allows, because we allow people to take advantage of us. Sometimes it's not about giving a person another chance, but it's about because you're gonna forgive them, so, right? So let's say I forgive you, but if I forgive you and I keep putting you back in the position to hurt me, that's foolishness. That's not wisdom. And that's not how God operates based on what we know about God and His wisdom. So that's kind of what I meant about we allow more than what God allows. I'm talking about in regards to uh, basically codependence, right? We think that we're being a good, godly person, but really it's the issue of boundaries. We don't have boundaries. You know, somebody come knocks on your door and they say, man, we're homeless. We need somewhere to stay. And you think you're being, a good Christian by letting them come in and stay. And then they rob you. You're like, dang, why would God allow that to happen? That was your wisdom. You allowed too much. You didn't have enough information to like allow them into your house like that. I don't know. That was an example just popped in my head. It may not be the best one, but hopefully that answers your question and helps, you know, what I said. If not, next week I'll try to come with a more clarified answer of how we allow more than what God allows, because I think that's important. But I'm speaking primarily about boundaries. You're left-handed, yes. Left-handed folk. Um, so you look up when you look up the definition for sinister, it says something about left-handedness or whatever. So yeah. Mm-mm-mm. All right. So I am going to. It's We've done 30 minutes, and I'm going to let you guys go ahead and get your weekend started. If you have more questions, just email me at, I don't have an email thing, but Clifton Brantley. Uh, well, you can go to cliftonbrantley.com, but you can email me at clifton at learntolove101.com or info at cliftonbrantley.com. And if you have more questions, I will definitely respond because I love questions. Questions, for whatever reason, make my brain fire in a different kind of way. My grandson's here, so I got to go entertain him for a little while. Um, but can I share? Oh, you know what? Since I'm on here, let me share one thing with you about conflict resolution. I know we're talking about communication, but let me share this with you. Hold on. Let me share this with you. Um, when you are engaged in conflict with your mate, your primary response is to respond to the feelings, not the facts, because you guys will disagree on the facts, right? You won't agree on the facts. But if your spouse says that something you did hurt their feelings, don't go into defending yourself, right? Because they're talking about them, they're not talking about you. Your job is to validate how they feel and then comfort them in that. And the analogy that I always use is, imagine you have like a 2-year-old. You get ready to go to the store, and you tell them to go ahead. We're getting ready to go to the store. They go outside, and because the wind is blowing, there's a tree in the yard, and the tree is shaking violently. 2-year-old sees the tree. She's terrified. She runs back in the house. You can tell that she is shaking. She's visibly shaking. She's crying. She's hysterical. And you say, "What's wrong?" And she said, "The tree is alive. It's going to get me." You don't dismiss the child because you know that the tree is not alive. You address how she feels. Why? Because how she feels, you can see that it's real. You see her shaking. You know that she's really afraid. So you pick her up and you comfort her and you calm her down. Then, after she's calm, you can maybe take her out to the tree and say, "See, look, the tree's not real. It's just a tree. That was just the wind blowing." But now, if you take the baby out to the tree before you calm her down, you're going to traumatize her, right? She'll be 35 years old, afraid of trees because of that trauma. But by you calming her down, she was able to then receive what you were going to say. So, in the same way with our mates, when they come at you, you don't respond to the reason they say they feel the way they feel, but you respond to the feeling because the feeling is real, even though it may not be accurate. So you respond to that, calm them down, and then you can address the reality of the situation. But oftentimes, the partner comes and say, "Hey, I feel this way," and we hear it as an attack, and we just immediately defend ourselves. And so how they feel never gets addressed, and now we're fighting about some stuff. We're on a whole different level, and that becomes a unresolved issue. Okay, so when we're doing conflict resolution, you address the feelings, not the facts, because you may not agree on the facts because y'all got two different dictionaries. It's the reason why two people can see an accident, the exact same accident, and give two totally different accounts because you have different eyes and different dictionaries. So focus on the feelings, not the facts. Absolutely. The baggage we carry, yes, that is true. Let's see. How do you communicate with someone who shuts down when they are confronted with things in reference to themselves? Um, So one thing you can do, so it depends on how significant that relationship is. If it's really significant, like a personal relationship, like with a sibling or your partner or a child, then you want to find out what's going on with them in a different setting. So if you're talking and they shut down, they have an issue, don't have anything to do with you. So in another setting, you talk to them about it and ask, you try to figure out what's going on with them. You try to figure out what's the trigger that you pushed, because they may not even know either. They may just be used to doing that. That's just what they do, shut down, but they don't even know why anymore. And so you can help them think and figure out what the trigger is also. Then that way you can handle them differently and they can choose to work on their stuff. But outside of that, if I was dealing with them, I would tell them to, okay, if you become overwhelmed and need to shut down, at least say something. Say, hey, this is too much. I need to take a break. As opposed to just shutting down and being silent. And now I got to figure out like what's going on with you, right? But that's what I would say. Try to, you try to investigate to see what's going on with them. Hey, I noticed when we talk about this, if we talk about it, I thought it was because when we get, the conversation gets aggressive, you shut down. But last time we tried to talk about it, it was calm and you still shut down. So I'm wondering if there's, this going on, or what's, what do you hear when I say such and such? Or what do you feel? What did you feel when I said that? Right? What were you thinking? Because, see, you want to know what's being processed in their dictionary, because their response to them is completely uh, appropriate. It's an appropriate response based on how they know how to be. And so you got to find out, what makes that appropriate for you, so I can know you better. Because the better you know someone, the better you can love them. Um, well, Kelly, you got to tell me what that wow was for. What was that wow for? I probably shouldn't be drinking this 5 hour, but what was that wow for? Is that a good wow or a bad wow? I'm curious. Um, all right, guys. I think I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. Um, yes, communicate. Yes, yes. Nope, nope. Not putting that comment up. Spammers really be on here. That's funny. That is hilarious. Okay. All right, good people. Well, like I said, hope you enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. I know they've opened up the city. Everything's supposed to be back to normal, supposedly. For me, I won't be back in the office. I'm looking at the beginning of June right now, because I want to make sure these numbers aren't going back up before I get out there, because I just want to be safe. Um, pray for our country and all that's going on as usual. Um, there's a lot going on, so pray for our country and pray for our safety. And you guys, I hope that, again, if you have more questions, just email me, info@cliftonbrantley.com, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. Last thing, I'm going to send the email out for the webinar in the next hour or so, about the next hour. So make sure you register for that, because you have to register so that you can get the replay. And I apologize for the technical difficulties this week. Hopefully those will not happen again, but it's not something I can control necessarily, not that I know of. Anyway, all right, you guys take care. And thank you, Miss Sonia, for engaging. I appreciate it. All right, you guys take care.